hold up. If I remember correctly, barely anyone liked the Super Adventure Box when World 2 was launched. So where exactly did this massive chant throughout the entire community come from? Welcome to Mindspike. April 2013 marked the launch of the Super Adventure Box with its first world. To much astonishment from the community, many were stunned by the fact that ArenaNet had basically created a game within a game. Now, statistically, an overwhelming number of the community should not have been around at the time the Super Adventure Box was launched. So for those of you who simply have no clue what the Super Adventure Box actually is, basically it was a huge, elaborate jumping puzzle centered around an 8-bit theme as a sort of tribute to the old retro games. This puzzle featured numerous levels, bosses, fun mechanics, exclusive in-content progression, as well as horizontal progression in the form of the acquisition of skins, and it also featured the only hard mode ever added to Guild Wars 2 to date, named Tribulation Mode. Sounds simple enough, right? ArenaNet had basically created a dungeon purely focused on jumping and running, with the occasional boss encounter. A dungeon that was fast, easy, and quite accessible to anyone due to the low level curve attached to this simple concept of jumping. This fact, partnered with the fact that the 8-bit theme of the puzzle seemed for many to evoke a long-lost sentimentality towards the original 8-bit games, a feeling commonly referred to as nostalgia, made SAB's popularity immediately reach unprecedented levels. So petitions were quickly made to have the box be a permanent thing in the game, because it was said that if SAB was a success, the team would get to add more to it. And so only a few months later, we saw the release of the second world of levels, but this didn't exactly end up as expected. All of a sudden, the community turned on this previously beloved creation. But why? Now, the predominant argument from the community at the time was, in all honesty, that World 2 was too hard and too long to complete. Yes, really. This is the equivalent of the community telling ArenaNet that they put in too much effort, and so we refuse to play it because reasons. Now, know that to a certain degree I'm over exaggerating here, but in reality, people were once again outraged that they had to put in so much time and effort to complete the content to get the final reward. And so a huge part of the community decided that in the end, it simply wasn't worth it. And so they quit the Super Adventure Box. Activity levels for SAB plummeted, and ArenaNet put future worlds on hold since, after all, nowhere near enough players were playing the content to justify keeping this going. This split the community between those who seemed to suddenly and very loudly be against everything that the Super Adventure Box represented, and those who simply loved the box for what it was. Now, as I said, at the time of World 2's release, this was the dominant negative argument against the box. I would argue, though, that the innate hate for Super Adventure Box didn't actually originate with the box itself. In fact, I believe that this public reasoning voiced by a vocal part of the community just about 2 years ago was, for many, indeed just an adopted opinion, fueled by a lack of insight into the real problem at hand. Let me explain. For all intents and purposes, the Super Adventure Box fits perfectly into Guild Wars 2 now, but at the time of its release, the core game was lacking on so many fronts. The dungeon scene seemed unrewarding, the personal story was lacking, and the living story was a fragmented mess. And so to have the extensive world of SAB highlighting the fact that ArenaNet seemed more focused on something only intended to be in the game for a limited time could easily seem like a big middle finger to the players dedicated to the core game. Now, that notion hasn't been uttered many times as far as I know. Many people have simply stuck with their main assumptions. Very few have gone back on the attitudes they formed when World 2 was launched. Over time, these beliefs, be they positive or negative, have solidified to the point where it's not uncommon to see borderline extremist viewpoints like...
What I would give, I would spend $20 to get back into Super Adventure Box.
It honestly isn't unusual to see people voice their deep love for SAB, and for some, like Mr. Mad Visual, to simply be willing to shell out coin just to have SAB added to the now play for free game that Guild Wars 2 is. To some, from an outside perspective, these solidified positive opinions may indeed simply look like fanboyism. Most people advocating their brand loyalty, be it iPhone, Android, Xbox, PlayStation, or whatnot, will generally tell you that they prefer the things they own or affiliate themselves with over the things that they don't, because they made the rational choice when they bought them, or in this case, played it. Though that is a widespread misconception. In reality, brand loyalty, also derogatorily labeled by some as fanboyism, more or less derives from the idea that you prefer the things you own because you rationalize your past choices to protect yourself, to protect your ego. And so of course I bought the infinite continue coin because SAB was so fun and I just wanted to farm it all day. Or no, wait, I bought it because I simply didn't want to grind baubles to spend on continue coins. Or wait, I bought it because I thoroughly believed that it would be a wise investment for the future worlds. I mean, why else would I have bought the damn thing if not for the fact that SAB is amazing, right? As I stated before though, I believe that most players didn't actually know what they necessarily liked or disliked about the Super Adventure Box, causing many at the time to resort to simplifications or justifications for why they did or did not like the content. This phenomenon is what psychologists refer to as the introspection illusion. You believe you know yourself and why you are the way you are. You look at what you did or how you felt and you make up some sort of explanation that you can reasonably believe. Believing that you understand your motivations and desires, your likes and dislikes, is what we call the introspection illusion. Fact is that the origin of certain emotional states is completely unavailable to you, and when pressed to explain them, you will simply construct a narrative which may or may not respectfully portray your current worldviews. In other words, you'll simply make something up. Go ahead, think of your favorite color or piece of music or movie. Now, explain to me exactly why you like it. Pause the video if you want, I'll wait. Chances are you will find it somewhat difficult to verbalize, but if pressed like I just did, you will probably be able to come up with something cohesive. Problem is that according to research, your explanation is probably going to be a big load of crap. When I ask you why you do or do not like certain things, I am asking you to reach deep into an emotion, a primal part of your psyche, and translate that into logical and rational language. I'm asking you to create a simple sentence about something so primal as emotion. This can obviously cause oversimplifications and mere confabulations to appear out of nowhere. This means that any verbalization of your previous emotional state may indeed not coincide with your actual emotion or train of thought, and the very act of having to explain yourself can change your attitude, meaning once spoken, you stick by it. And so the funny thing about the introspection illusion is that once your opinion has been voiced and you've stored this cognitive confabulation, this opinion may indeed solidify more heavily in your persona than it would have if you hadn't been confronted with a scenario in which you were forced to make an opinion. This phenomenon occurs in a variety of aspects of our everyday lives. In full honesty, it's quite normal for humans in general to create these so-called confabulatory ideologies. It's what allows us to verbalize ourselves and create our own narrative in a modern world so focused on individuality. Over time though, many of your opinions may erode, expand, or transform to better reflect your current viewpoint or to reflect the viewpoint of your peers at a given time. For the most part though, your opinion shifts are simply due to you creating a new narrative every single time you're confronted with the opportunity to do so. Now, what's special about the Super Adventure Box in this regard is that because the Super Adventure Box has been offline for a couple of years, there's been plenty of opportunities for people to voice their concerns about the lack of SAB, their mistrust in ArenaNet's prioritizing, and a million other topics related to SAB. And so every single time that this topic is brought up, whoever starts the thread initially does what I just did a minute ago when I asked you to describe why you like your favorite color. But this time it's on a topic which in itself have had time to evolve. This build-up causes whatever minor affection towards the box you may have had at the beginning of it all to most likely have blossomed into a beautiful, perfect flower without any flaws. Because every retelling of your narrative may have solely become focused on defending your perceived assumptions. Any and all negativity you may have had at the beginning as well will have worn away. This is the exact phenomenon that creates the longing sentimentality that we regard as nostalgia. It's why we regard old movies that we haven't seen for years to be the best movies of all times. It's why old, outdated, and unavailable console games build unnecessary affection, and it's why some people don't like broccoli solely based on the premise that they didn't like it when they first tasted it 15 years ago. And so in an odd turn of events, the Super Adventure Box indeed experienced the exact same nostalgic glorification as the old 8-bit games that SAB was meant to act as a tribute to. The only problem with the fact that our brains are selective and inventive when it comes to memories about subjects like SAB and retro games is that if SAB ever return, or if you ever get your hands on that old classic, there's a huge likelihood that it will in fact not live up to those same fond, misconstrued memories that some people cling to with their very lives. The flip side of this idea is that some advocates against the box may indeed find themselves enjoying it a whole ton more than they thought they would, although most probably won't admit it because the human ego is a resilient thing indeed, but that is a topic for another day, I guess. Now, I realized that paradoxically, in making this video, I just opened the floodgates once more for you guys to form new opinions or strengthen old ones. Nonetheless, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this aspect of the SAB discussion in the comments down below. Personally, I love the Super Adventure Box and I wanted to return to the game someday. As I said at the very beginning, I believe that it fits very well into the game now, though that's more on a mechanical aspect rather than a lore aspect, given the fact that we're heading off to war. I'd simply just prefer that when it actually returns, we don't see the same massive QQ that we saw back when World 2 was launched. And so I made this video because I believe that if people understand that their memory is malleable and adhere to this fact in their future encounters, we'll see a lot more realistic introspection appear within our community when it comes to new as well as old topics. That said, when the box someday does return, let's then talk a bit more about the shadow box, the hidden secret buried deep within the Super Adventure Box, since that is a source of much mystery, and I love mysteries. But for now, that's all I had for you guys this time. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, I will see you in the mists.